I'm gonna unmute myself and recording. Wonderful. I'm gonna screen share my entire screen, and that should be good. How you doing? Damn, there's a ton of slides. Oh. I'll give 2 more minutes, and then I'll start at 35. We're gonna start with a recap, so it shouldn't be that bad. All right, let's start cooking. So I'm gonna pause the music. Let's get rid of that. I'm gonna put my bar down, and I'll minimize my face. And let's get started. Okay, wonderful. So today we're gonna go over the internet, and more specifically, basically like routing and addresses. We'll first start just running through some of the more important slides from last time. We went over Git. There are a few Git commands that are like the only ones that you'll ever actually use. Git status is awesome. Um, it tells us what branch we're on, and it also, I'm gonna write these down. And it also lets us know if we have any files that we need to stage. Which is super useful. I spam Git status when I'm working on projects. And then I'll write 1, 2, 3. But essentially, at the end of last class, we went over. So there's staging, which is using the git add, or we used it in VS Code by just doing the plus. So there's git add, git commit is the second step in getting your code from your machine to GitHub, and then there's git pushing. All super useful, and then all super useful and necessary to get code from your machine to GitHub. And the last couple commands that were super useful are git branch lets you make a new branch, and git checkout lets you go to that new branch. And these are kind of like the main ones. If you ever merge a branch and another branch, you'll use git merge. If you need to restore something, you might use git restore. All of these chat is really good at, and like it's not super useful for you to waste time on. It's just kind of knowing that these are like the ones that you kind of want to know how to use. Everything else you can kind of chat. Um, so that is our quick recap, and we'll move on to the internet. And I say the internet, but we're talking about basically how the internet works for websites. Uh, if you guys recall from this was the end of September that we did this. Essentially, the way that we get websites, so if I go to google.com or github.com, we have yourself or the client, and you're using a browser, and the browser renders website files. But where do we get the website files? Uh, we need to get them from a server, which is a computer that has files that is always on and it sends the files to. And we're gonna go and basically this is like great at a high level and it makes sense. But how do we get to the server is kind of the question that we're gonna answer today. I'm gonna speed through the rest of these because this isn't as relevant. But I'll actually go back for a second. Uh, to just restate that once. Basically, what we're going to try to accomplish today is like, what do you need to find this server? What does that even mean? And how do you get it to give you website files? So we'll be kind of basic, and we're going to start with IP addresses, and then we'll also talk about servers again. So an IP address is essentially if you think about how your home where you've lived at or any store you've ever been to or any school, anything that's kind of connected to like public roads has an address. An IP address functions in the same way for things connected to the internet. Um, your laptop itself doesn't have an IP address, but every time you connect to the internet, so if you connect to Saxonet or GuestNet or anything, you are given an IP address that essentially is like, let's say you lived on like 10 Myrtle Beach Avenue. Your IP address is essentially just going to be like, hey, this is like where I am now. So if we look at the ceiling, that's a router for this room. So if anybody's connected to Saxonet in this room, essentially what's happening is the router up there is going to give you one of these like stupidly complicated or long codes. They're actually not stupid, but they are super long and complicated. If we look at the bottom, basically there's two different types of IP addresses. Um, oh, I'm gonna real quick remind myself what IP stands for. Oh, Internet Protocol. Okay, that makes sense. Basically, there's two types of IP addresses. Uh, we when the internet was like first made, and I guess people didn't. You'll all learn this if you ever take a networking class, but the internet wasn't really made to be scaled the way it is now. Like it wasn't made to basically have like trillions of dollars moving through it and like super private stuff. It was kind of just made for people to like talk to each other kind of simply. But basically in 1981, people created the IP address version 4, which is like three things and then let's see. Uh, we don't have to get super complicated, but basically just so you like recognize them. Uh, it's gonna be some stuff and 4 decimals. Wait. 3 decimals and for basically 0 to 255 uh numbers. So these could be anything from 0 to 255. And this is essentially the same as like what your home address is. You could think of these as like this is going to be a little inaccurate, but you could think of this as like the street number and then the street, and then you could like have the state, or sorry, the town and then the state. Like they all kind of do something, and there's a hierarchy to it. So it is actually quite similar to addresses. Uh, and now it's how they were originally made. And now, uh, basically, we have a much longer, and what this gives us is just more possibilities. With the Internet Protocol version 6, these addresses just are huge. So they can have, there's like way more addresses, as you can see in the blue. We kind of like ran out because there's so many computers and laptops and whatever. Um, the only thing that's useful from this slide is basically if you see something that's like a bunch of periods or a bunch of colons, it's probably an IP address. And these are kind of just what they look like. And if you ever take a networking class, you'll kind of dive into like what's important about them. Uh, and we'll also go into servers now, and then we'll combine the two in a second. But essentially, whenever we talk about like a server that like gives us website files or does anything ever, the term server is kind of just like logical because there's no one way to like have a server. When we say server, all that we're kind of saying is it's just a computer that's like probably always on. Um, it could be like I could turn my laptop into a server for all of you guys. Typically we use servers that are in like data centers that are in like hosted by or that are built by like Google or uh big companies that just have a ton of computers without screens, and they just like give you the compute resources so you can use them, and they're always on. But basically, when we use the internet on our laptops that have screens and whatnot, we refer to ourselves as clients. And when we go to anywhere else to get information and we need a computer to give us that information, we refer to that as a server. So in the context of us going to Google or GitHub or whatever.com, uh, your laptop could be the client and the server could be another laptop. But all you're doing is you're requesting something from somebody, and then the server's giving it back to you. Um, when we say deployments, if you guys have anyone, oh my gosh, are any of us like familiar with the term deploying or hosting? Completely fine if not. But basically, when we say deploy, or we're gonna like deploy our website or host our website on a server, what that means is we are going to take our code that runs on our machine and we're going to put it on another computer that is always on and able to just give us that code whenever we want. I'm gonna make sure that's not me. It is me. Sorry. Um, yeah. So deployment is literally just like taking our code and putting it on a computer. Um, and that's kind of like how websites, or how a server would give us back a website at a very, very high level. So now we're going to talk about DNS, or domain name system. I promise there's like 3 complicated things in this, and then we'll just get to do an example and it'll be cool. Um, okay, so DNS. Essentially, we talked about super complicated addresses. Uh, I'll do a quick exercise. Let's all look at this. Um, Localhost IP address. So the IP address for your machine, not like for me to get to you, but for you to get to you, and yes, there is an address for you to get to yourself, is always going to be 127.0.0.1. That's just what we've picked. So for any reason you ever need to send something, not technically through the internet, but if you need to send something to your own machine, or we'll cover very soon if you need to host a server to give you a website so you can like develop and look at it locally, we're going to use ourself, which is the address 127.0.0.1. Um, Let me see if this works. Wikipedia IP address. So, oh, sick. Okay. Can we all see this? This is Wikipedia's IP address. It's 192.0.2.1. Did any of us know that before? I'm assuming no. Um, and once I go off of Wikipedia, I have already forgotten what it was. It was like 192 and then something else. 0.2000. Sick. Now, if you want to memorize the four-section number for every website you ever go to, you totally can. And you can just put that into Google and it'll be fine. But basically, what DNS does is it goes, okay, like it's cool that the nerds have made this like system for addressing everything. And like that was fine. And it was made in like 1980. But when everyday people use the internet, that would suck if we had to like memorize all of these addresses. So DNS basically is our way of giving like names to certain addresses. Uh, think about this like if you are we all familiar with latitude and longitude? Essentially, if you were to go to Google Maps right now, you could put in latitude and longitude for something. And essentially, if you put in Georgetown University and you get 3700 O Street, what's happening is the 37 O Street is like turning into the latitude and longitude for Georgetown University, and then Maps will do some crazy algorithm to get you to where you want to go. Um, that's what's happening here. Essentially, within the internet, whenever we want to figure out, let's say, Wikipedia.com, when we make a request, so when we hit enter in Chrome for wikipedia.com, our laptop sends a request to what we call a DNS server, which is just some computer that's hosted by like a big internet company. That computer or the DNS server is essentially going to go, okay, you want to know what wikipedia.com is? I can tell you because all it does is it takes in requests with like letters and then it spits back out IP addresses. And then it tells us, okay, like you had the nickname, it's wikipedia.com, but you want to know 192.0.2.1, I'll give it to you. And that's kind of like this is like the internet in a nutshell. We just use nicknames for everything, so it's easy for us to remember. But what everything actually is addresses of machines that you can get to by going first to the Wi-Fi router, and then the Wi-Fi router goes out of the university and then goes back to wherever the machine's hosted, most of the time in a data center. Um, cool. So we just saw google.com here. I've totally stolen all of these slides from the internet, by the way. Sorry. But it's much better than I could make. Um, Okay, what is the URL? We don't need to pay attention to like the slash about and the slash blog part. We'll get to packets and query parameters. But what's important for us is essentially the domain name. Um, Whenever you use a URL, I'm sure you guys have seen HTTP or HTTPS. If you're unfamiliar with what the two are, or that there is a distinction, My understanding is HTTP is not encrypted. So essentially whatever traffic, like if you're viewing a website or viewing an email or whatever it is and it's on HTTP, um the webs like the internet or sorry, the text that's coming through, like someone could just like watch or like snoop your traffic and they could just see your email and everything. When we use HTTPS, it just means that it's encrypted and jumbled and no one could understand it until it gets to you and your laptop will decrypt it. This is kind of like the gold standard HTTPS for the internet because we don't like to be watched and snooped. That happens enough in our lives. Um, the subdomain, not super important. What is important is the actual domain name, which is comprised of the domain, which in this is concrete CMS, and then the top level domain, which is the .com. There's like, let's see how many we can do off the head. So there's, let's see, let's call them top level domains. So there's .com. Does anybody know what .com stands for, or what com stands for? Do we have any guesses?
That's for company, right?
I think it's commercial, but let's see.
Um,
Yeah. Because I think the internet was mainly like for businesses, or that's what .coms were. Um, so there's .com, there is dot, I mean, we're at Georgetown. All of our emails have a .edu. Uh, there's .org, which isn't really used like it used to be, but it used to be like for organizations. Um, a really hot one is .ai. Uh, I was gonna do an exercise where we basically just go through all of these. But there's actually a ton. What's interesting is there are not infinite number of top level domains. Like you couldn't just do dot and then like your name. Like these are specifically made by the company that or like the group that kind of like governs the internet. What's interesting is each country was given their own uh like top level domain. So there's .us, .ca for Canada. I think AI is actually a country's. Let's check the or no. Uh .tv country and domain. So is anybody familiar with Twitch? Um like the streaming service? Essentially Twitch is found at twitch.tv. They might own twitch.com. They do, but it goes to twitch.tv. Um, sale of twitch.tv price. So, oh no. Wait. Uh, I think so Twitch like bought the .tv from Tuvalu,
That's
the
right.
country, for like some insane amount of money at some point. But point being, basically each country kind of like has a bunch of the or has its own top level domain, and then there's like some others that have been created. There's .dev, there's .app, there's .ai, there's .org, but there are not an infinite amount of these, and there's not like dot and then like a 20 character thing. Like they're pretty short. And the idea is um the way these DNS servers work is there's a DNS server for .com and there's a DNS server for .ai, and there's a DNS server for .org and .edu. And basically, that server will know all of the addresses that are for it, or that it encompasses. So there's like a hierarchy, and it's always backwards for URL. So if we go to here, let's just take google.com. So when a computer is looking for google.com, what it first does is it goes, okay, we have .com. So let's go to the .com domain name server. Which again we can think about, it's a computer. We go, hey, .com, do you have a Google under you? And then .com goes like, oh yeah, I do have a Google. And then it gives you back the IP address for Google. So we do the top, so the top level domain, or TLD, is going to be like the ending portion. And then the actual name of our domain is what's before that. I'm not quizzing any of you on any of this. I kind of nerd out about it. There's a ton more. Like this gets really deep, and it's like a fun rabbit hole if anyone ever wants to go on it. YouTube is full of good networking and routing stuff, and once you like get more into web development, it'll become easier to like want to understand it. Um, but I'm kind of just bringing this stuff up so it's like you kind of like even know what questions to ask in the future, whenever you need it for yourself. But let's put it together now. So if I'm a user and I want to go to like, let's say YouTube, not example.com, essentially what happens is from my laptop, I go to a DNS server and I go, hey, I want youtube.com. And what it does inside of it is it goes, okay, you have .com. Let's figure out, like, let's look at the list of all the IP addresses for the .coms. We find YouTube, and then it sends us back an IP address that looks like this. And now my Chrome has an IP address for youtube.com, but I still don't have the website files. So then I go back through the internet and now I know the address or where to go to get the website files. So now with the actual number for the address, I make another request through the internet and I go, hey, YouTube, but instead of YouTube, it's like, hey, all these numbers. Can I please get your website files so I can watch some videos? And it goes like, yeah. And then it sends it back to me. And it sends me HTML and CSS and JavaScript. And that's kind of like all of the black magic that goes into just getting you like cat videos or whatever it is that you want to do on the internet. Um, that's a grossly simplified way of doing it, and it's like one of the more complicated and like fascinating things that humans have done, in my opinion. Like connecting the entire world so simply. But this is like a way to kind of think about logically what happens when we use our computers, which is crazy. Like uh, so many people will use the internet and have no idea how it works, including like policymakers and whatnot. So it's like it's crazy that that's like it can be simplified and it gets super, super deep. So now let's talk about deployment, and how it kind of like pertains to that. I'll go on one quick rant before actually. So domains, are so there are a finite number of them, and essentially the way that you get a domain, if you guys want like yourself.com, is you go to like a company that owns a bunch of them and you rent them or you lease them for like a year at a time, typically. So when I say that, essentially what I'm like, I'll just quickly demonstrate. Um, Google sold all of its domains to Squarespace. What you'll see is like everyone wants you to buy domains from them. But essentially, so when I search up Squarespace domains, everybody is like crazy sponsored, so that their website comes up first. But essentially, if I want to buy I don't know. Let's make up a domain, join hoyadevelopers.com. I go to one of these services. So Squarespace has it, GoDaddy has domains. I highly encourage you not to use GoDaddy. It sucks. And they're like kind of unethical and like they just charge you because people are confused and don't understand this stuff. Um, like they charge like hundreds of dollars for a service where they essentially do like brokerage and get you a domain from someone else. But all they do in reality is they send an email and it's not even guaranteed to succeed. Whatever, like I like Squarespace just because they got all of Google's domains. They have a ton. They only charge you like basically the way all these work is you get charged like half the price or like a fraction of the price for 1 year, and then every year after that it'll be around $20 for .com. Um, Once you find one of these, you buy it and then you essentially own the routing for that IP address. What actually happens is you put your code on a server and then you tell Squarespace, hey, anytime someone searches up joinhoyadevelopers.com, go to the IP address that I give you. And that should be to the server that you make. So essentially, if we go back to our slides, Squarespace is the DNS, or Squarespace domains is the DNS, and we point it to a server of our choice, which actually has the code. So actually, it would be much better to go to this. The DNS service would be Squarespace, and then the server is whatever server we choose. We'll take a look at today. GitHub offers like a hosting server, and they call it GitHub Pages. And then the other one we're going to look at is Vercel. If anyone's ever heard of the company Vercel, uh, they're awesome and they've created the framework Next.js. They're also very greedy and they love money. And I'm sure another company will start to be the metas or like the like the one that's dominating soon because they've gotten super greedy. But Vercel is like a very, very easy way to get a website up and running. So yeah, we've learned about DNS and we've learned about how to like get a domain once you buy a domain. And then once you buy it like the actual way, I can just show you guys so that it's like incredibly transparent. Let's see if I can just sign in right now. I have so many accounts. Yeah, I play a bunch of video games, so a lot of them are um like Smurf accounts. Yeah. I actually made a lot of them for Clash of Clans at one point because I had a ton of them. Yeah, I did. My brother never stopped there. He like one of his crazy like fun facts is he was the best in the like he has a screenshot of him being like #1 ranked in the world in Clash of Clans for a bit. Yeah. I get to play every day for years.
CS teacher in high school beat a random app game every single day, so he kept re-going to #1 every single day.
That's
He would
crazy.
drop, and then every morning it was his morning routine. He would go right back.
Yeah. That's actually insane.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
I would say unemployed behavior, but he was employed.
I mean, yeah, it's the best when you are employed and you still get to do the unemployed behavior. So this is like what it looks like once you've bought a bunch of domains. This is kind of convenient for you guys to see. Um, I own like this one's a soccer league. So like if you look up watermeloncup.com, basically what happens is the request goes to Squarespace. Squarespace points to I host this with Vercel, a computer that Vercel like manages that I put my GitHub code onto a Vercel computer. Squarespace goes, okay, someone wants watermeloncup.com. Here's the IP address. That's the numbers that pertain to that. Gives it back. You put the numbers into the internet, which is the IP address, and that goes to Vercel. Vercel gives you back the files, and it's my website. Um, yeah. So no, that one's a soccer league I played in. I was kind of bored of like the Google Forms to set it up, so I made like a website for it and then also a draft engine. So at the beginning of the season, we can like draft people like FIFA style. I made everybody into like cards with like rankings and stuff. So when they sign up, they automatically go into the pool. But there's like essentially what I'm showing you is there's a bunch of these, and then the way you actually configure uh how to get like or I guess your domain name system working or your DNS is once you've bought a domain. So I bought watermeloncup.com from Squarespace, and I should use the terminology rent or lease. But essentially, I give them $20 a year. They give me the right to basically make this URL point to any IP address that I want. So I go into this DNS tab and I come here, and essentially I make this at record, which is like where in the world it is. I turn it into the IP address of the computer that Vercel is running my code on. That's it. That's like all of websites. It's a ton, but like that's all it is. You buy a domain from somebody, you go into the DNS, which is the domain name system, and you make it so that that domain points to an IP address that you choose. So domains and hosting are two different things. But the domain points to your host, which I use Vercel. We'll use GitHub Pages as well. But the host gives you an IP address of the machine. And if you connect the domain name system or the person with your domain to the host, that's all you do. Uh, Sick. So I'm gonna leave Squarespace, but that was kind of it. All you have to do is you throw it in. Like when you first buy a domain, it like and you go to that domain, it'll be like, all right, we're not set up yet. Um, I can actually show you. Like if there's no website files to return, Squarespace usually just gives you like a default. Let's see. I'm curious if yeah. Mm, that's actually not what I was thinking about, but that's fun. Uh, Fun fact, if anyone's ever seen the error code 404, uh, that always is not found. So if you search up the wrong domain or a domain that doesn't have DNS configured, and you don't find, if you search up a domain and it doesn't first get the IP address and then go to the IP address and then get back website files, you'll get a 404, which means whatever you're looking for, the internet has not found. Um, let's move on. Okay, from now I'm just demoing. So have we all made any website files yet? Actually, what we can do is we can use what we did last week. And I should do GitHub Pages, but I kind of just want to do Vercel with you guys. Um, let's see. I'm actually going to open it in Windsurf just because I feel like using Windsurf. I'm curious, have any of us used Cursor or Windsurf? I see a nod. Nothing else. Yeah, they're cool. I think they don't really do an extraordinary amount. They're just super convenient. Um, let's see. Open folder. I think I'm in development, bootcamp. Yeah, there we go. So let's do anything. Yeah, let's do Hoya Airlines. Okay, I'm gonna go to my index.html, open with live server. Let's see. Yeah. So let's host this so that we can all go to it through the internet. Um, if you guys want to follow along with me, feel free. Uh, if not, I'll just walk through it and this is all being recorded. So also feel free to just look at that. Um, or you can just observe for the vibes. Uh, let me do this on an incognito tab just so I can show you what you would see. We're all going to go to the website Vercel.com. What does Vercel do? They'll tell you AI or whatever other bullshit they need to do for their investors. At the end of the day, all that Vercel does is it takes your code and it puts it on a computer that's running in an Amazon data center. All it does. What problem did they solve and why are they like so valuable? If you are an average coder and you put your code on GitHub, but you want it to be on like something that the rest of the internet can see, if you wanted to put your code on an AWS or Amazon Web Services computer, uh, like that's something that is the cheapest it gets, just going direct to Amazon. There's three huge cloud players. There's Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. Amazon has AWS, Google has Google Cloud Platform or GCP, and Microsoft has Azure. I think it's Microsoft. I know it's Azure. I think it's Microsoft. But essentially, we call it wrapping when a company makes putting something onto one of the computers that's provided in the cloud by one of these companies easier. So Vercel goes, okay, sick, you have code in GitHub and you want it to be on a computer that everyone can see. Just let us take care of taking that code, putting it on a computer, and giving you the IP address for that computer and it'll be super easy for you like going forward. And they actually do this for free for hobby building, which is just one person that wants to host a website. So for this demo, we go to Vercel.com. We'll just log in. I usually just do it with my GitHub. And once you've done that, if you want to follow along, feel free. If not, I'm just gonna do it and we can do it together. But essentially, if you go to Vercel.com, and you've logged in, you'll see this. Uh, you actually won't see all of my projects, but if you've ever done a project with Vercel, you will see it. What do? We make a new project, and essentially when we're doing that, oh, you know what? I need to put this on GitHub. Let's quickly put this on GitHub. This is going to be a recap from one of the last classes, but essentially I'm going to make a GitHub repository. So I'm going to call this Hoya Airlines hosting. I'm going to make it public. I'm going to create it. And let's go here. Okay, wonderful. So what I'm doing right now is I'm making sure I have a GitHub repository that is cloned on my machine. I'm going to put all of the code that I want to be in GitHub on it. And that's what I'm doing right now. Let's do an ls. So I'm going to git clone, and then I'm going to put in the repository name, and then wonderful. I'm going to put all of the code. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to put it into that guy. Now that it was tracked, because I cloned it with the git clone command, VS Code or Git is the one that's actually doing it, is tracking all of the files in that folder. It puts a little tracker on it. It's the Hoya Airlines hosting folder. Got a bunch of changes. I'm gonna stage them all, which is I essentially just did git add period. but VS Code makes it convenient. And then I like to go to the command line for the rest. So we're gonna do a git commit with a message once it's all staged, and we're gonna commit, and we're gonna say initial commit, which is just pretty common for the first commit. Oh, that's right, because I need to make sure I'm in that repository. We're gonna do initial commit. And then we're going to git push. Okay, wonderful. So if we go here and we refresh now, what I did is I did a git add, a git commit, and a git push. Just in the essence of time, I'm going quickly. I'm sorry if you are following along. If you're following along and you want to host something, you can just go to any GitHub and now start with me. Okay, we have stuff in GitHub. Wonderful. Let's go back to Vercel. And the beauty of Vercel is it just makes it so stinking easy to do this. It already updated. What Vercel does is it links to your GitHub. It looks at all of your repositories. All I have to do is I have to click import for Hoya Airlines hosting. And then framework is just going to be, I should be able to just click HTML. Vercel framework for HTML and CSS. Is it just other? Oh, it's not a framework. That's why. If we're just using HTML and CSS, we would choose other, and then there's some other stuff that we'll eventually get to like what environment variables are, but for now, all we need to know is we're deploying from the main branch. So Vercel can also see in GitHub all of the branches you have. My code's on main. Your code that is being deployed should always be main or master. That way, if you're working on branches, they don't mess up what is actually going to be deployed, which is like another advantage of branches. You don't mess up production or the thing that people see when they go to your website. And if we hit deploy now, so that was like 3 clicks. We imported our repository and we just hit deploy. What should happen, look at that, is Vercel went ahead and it went to my GitHub and it essentially copied all of the files and it put it on a computer that is running inside an Amazon Web Services data center. And it now knows the IP address for that computer. And if I had a spare domain lying around in Squarespace, I would just point the @ value to the IP address that's Vercel is giving me now. And wonderful. So if any of you guys now go to hoyaairlines.vercel.app, you would now see this. It is just publicly on the internet.
Like, and this is like free to do.
Yeah. You can host as many websites as you want.
Where does Vercel get profit? Oh, and they have
So
over
if
it.
you ever want to work with other people or you make a website on Vercel that like gets a lot of traffic, let's say thousands of people use it,
Then they'll be like, wait, you should be
you start
us
paying.
now.
So they're fucking awesome for like people that just want to fuck around and make like a very casual thing. Like my soccer website, the Watermelon Cup one that I had, hundreds of people use it, hundreds of people like make requests to like my database and stuff, and that goes through the client, which is on Vercel. No charges to me ever. I don't put a credit card in. However,
Wait, then you need to pay for the domain.
yeah, but that's
But
not
that's
through
it.
Vercel. That's Squarespace.
Yeah, that's it though.
But if I were to start getting like hundreds of thousands of people, like if I for some reason made the next Amazon, that's when they get you. And it's like it's very convenient to be on Vercel, so they'll just like start charging you, and it's yeah, which is why I say they're very greedy. They start you nicely, but if both of us wanted to work on a GitHub and like I'll show you right now what's like really cool about Vercel is if we go in and we go to index.html for my website, so I go back to my local machine. To make any changes to GitHub, I'm gonna have to stage, commit, push. But let's do that very quickly. I'm just gonna have, wow, there's so much crap on this page. Um, so in the body, let's, what does it look like right now? It looks like that. I don't know. What should we do? Let's like make this link to like Expedia or something. Let's say I'm too lazy. So we're gonna wrap the P tag and an A tag with an href. And the href is just gonna be like expedia.com. Let's see how that looks if I go to my live server. So does that work? No. Wait, I think it's because I did a paragraph text. Let's just not even do paragraph. Does that work? One sec. Oh, that's why. Let's see if that's it. I had a bad link. There it is. Okay, let's see if that works now. Whoa, I'm annotating. That's crazy. Let's open with live server. Okay, wonderful. The live server was dead. Um, okay, so we've added a link. We've added some change. Look how easy it is to get the change from my computer to the thing that's on Vercel that you guys can see right now. Um, all we have to do is we go and we, just like normal, we stage. So we're essentially doing git add and then we're doing the file, but we do that in VS Code because it's much easier. And I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna do a git commit once it's staged. Uh, I have something called an alias, so it's like it makes it shorter. I just like doing that. Um, you can set aliases. Just you can use chat to tell you how to do it, but you can make them like so. My git CI does git commit. It's just I don't have to type 6 letters. Um, added Expedia link. Git push now. If you want to do, if you're on, okay, if any of you have Windows, and you want to do 2 commands in one, um, all you have to do is this is like 2 lines of commands. It'll do the first one and then it'll do the second one after the semicolon. Git push new is also an alias and it just does git push and then it like does some other garbage. Um, but what's cool about this is it'll do all of this and then it'll do that. And let's see if we can catch it before it does it. Deployments. So if we go to Vercel, Vercel saw that GitHub got a push and it immediately made another deployment with the new shit. So now if we go to Vercel or the website, already got the new thing, which is sick. So what did we do today? We kind of learned what the internet is. There's domains and there's hosts. The hosts give you files. The domains basically go, here's a nickname or English for how to find the server. And we're going to give you back the actual address or the numbers to find the host. And the host is what has website files. Hosts are like Vercel. Vercel is fucking awesome. And domains, I mean, what's good? Like GoDaddy, Namecheap, Squarespace is the one I like to use a lot. all of them will just lease you a domain for 20 bucks a year essentially. Uh yeah, there have been some crazy domain purchases. I think what did business.com uh domain sale price? Yeah. Essentially, if you have a good domain or you like own a domain that like a new startup is going for, like some of these guys will pay you just an outrageous amount. Domains are super expensive. Like Elon Musk just had X.com, which is why he changed Twitter to X. I'm curious what he bought it for.
Well, he's had it. Oh no, wait, no, right. He lost it and then got it back, right?
I think so. I don't remember what it actually was, but yeah. Cool domains that are nice and short. It's like license plates on a car. Like the more succinct and like simple it is, the more valuable it's going to be. Um, the one thing I didn't show you guys today is how to uh within Vercel find the IP address of the computer that your website's being hosted on so you can put it in Squarespace. Vercel again makes it super easy. If you go to domains, all you have to do, so once you're in Vercel, you go to domains, you hit add domain, and then you do the one that you own. So if I do like join hoyadevelopers.com and I hit save, essentially what it does is it goes, okay, sick, go into like your Squarespace or whatever has your domain name host, and this is the IP address that you put in. And this is full circle. This is like everything you have to do, which is sick. And if you don't want to do that, Vercel gives you a domain. Like as you guys can see, it just basically another thing on how the internet works is like there's top level domain, the domain, and then anything inside of it is considered a subdomain. And if you own a domain, you also own all of the possible subdomains. So like what Vercel does is they own Vercel.app. So they own the domain Vercel, which is grouped into the .app top level domain. And all they do is they make something inside of it. So to actually find Hoya Airlines hosting.vercel.app, we first go to the top level domain, and the top level domain would be .app, and it goes, okay, sick, we know where Vercel is. And then there's also a domain name server within Vercel, and that one goes, oh, sick, yeah, you're at Vercel.app. You want to know where Hoya Airlines hosting is inside of us? Yeah, we can get you the IP address for that. So it's just there's a bunch of nesting that can happen. Google does it all the time. If you want to change your account, it's accounts.google.com. What's cool about that is a subdomain can be a completely different computer or IP address. So what that means is like Hoya Airlines hosting.vercel.app can be like the code from one GitHub. But if I have like join dot Hoya Airlines hosting dot Vercel.app, that could be a totally different GitHub repository's code that's being hosted on a different computer in Vercel. What does that mean? Anytime you see a company have like a join, like it's probably because they want to make like a different website for the joining or whatever it is. I'm over time, but that is kind of the internet and how it pertains to us as web developers. I think it's fucking fascinating, and you could spend hours and hours and hours learning about it. But that's kind of like I try to give you guys like a relevant snapshot of what it means to us, and it means that we can in minutes put code from our machine onto GitHub, buy a domain on Squarespace, and then get our code from GitHub onto Vercel, connect Squarespace and Vercel, and that means that anybody on their phone or their computer or anything that uses the internet can actually go and see our website, which is pretty cool. Sick. All right. Have a good weekend, everybody.